Hi there, welcome back. This is the second in a series that I'm doing on stranded knitting, and this one is going to talk about stranded knitting worked flat, focusing on the right side of the work. The video after this one is about stranded knitting worked flat, focusing on the wrong side of the work. So we all know that when you're working stranded knitting, there's sometimes when there are long floats behind the forward color. And we don't want to have floats that are big enough that you can stick your finger through, which of these would be because we're working with worsted weight yarn. So we have to employ a method to catch the float on the back of the work. I've covered that in the first video that's just on general on stranded knitting, worked in the round and catching the floats, holding the yarns in the right and left hand. This video is going to focus on not only catching the floats on the right side, but we also need to catch this color over here along the edge. If you're working stranded knitting flat, I'm assuming that you're going to have some sort of a selvage edge. Either you're going to be picking up stitches along here and adding something or seaming, or if not, you're going to have an edge. And in this case, I'm putting a little garter stitch edge on the side of the work. So when the garter stitch is in the light color and the blue starts inside that on each edge. So we need to catch it here so that both sides of that dark stitch are open. If you don't catch it, it'll become a little pinched stitch and both the strands will be pulled over towards the center of the work. So that's going to be one thing that we're going to show. So I'm ready to start here, and we're going to actually work through this just on the right sides. The second video I'll be showing the wrong sides. So we're going to start with row 1. You read the chart, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4, and I marked them. These are the right side rows that start on this side. These are the wrong side rows. A means that we're going to trap color A. Color A is the dark, B is the light. So we're going to trap color A here, trap color B here, and A here. And I'm going to work up through this section of this little sample. So we're going to start right out by knitting these first 4 stitches. Now in this diagram, the B color is the background and A, the dark, is the foreground. So I'm going to hold A, which is the dark color, in my right hand, and I will hold B in my left hand, always. And I won't switch them back and forth, because if you do switch them, you're going to get some very strange stripes across your knitting. So A is in my left hand because that's the dominant color. It's the foreground color. B is in my left hand. So we're going to knit these 4 stitches here, and then we're going to add in A. So in this case, it's very good to be able to use both your hands in knitting. I'm going to enlarge this at this point. Okay. So we've got our 2 darks. So we're going to start up right with the dark. We don't have it yet, so we're just going to knit with it. 2 darks, and then 3 lights. There's no stranding on this first row. We're just starting out. 3 lights. Then we've got 1 dark. So we're just following this pattern, and we're going to follow it across and then do the wrong side row, and I'll be back in just a second to start row 3. Okay, so we've just finished row 2, and I'm getting ready to turn my work to the right side so that we can work row 3. Now remember, you turn your work so that the yarns don't cross. If you did turn it this way, do you see how the blue yarn, we're getting all tangled up now, and then our yarns get twisted. So when you're turning from knitting flat for stranded knitting, when you turn your work, always turn it so that these 2 yarns do not, I'm getting all my tails tangled, that they do not cross, your 2 working yarns. See, they're not crossed. They're free. And the white yarn, the light yarn is staying to my right side. It's down on the floor. The blue yarn staying, or the dark yarn staying to my left. It's down on the floor. And so I keep track of these yarns. See, they never twist. One's on either side of my body, and they don't twist. So we're going to work row 3 now. So that means we're going to knit 4 for our garter edge. Then we're going to be trapping the blue. Even though the blue isn't worked till over here, we want to trap it here at the edge. That keeps the stitches pulled out appropriately. If we just went straight from this stitch to this stitch, it would pull that outer leg of the blue stitch over this way, and this would be a pinched looking stitch here. It would not look good. So we're going to trap the blue over here so it's already coming in the correct direction to work that. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to put our right needle in as if we're going to make a stitch. We go under the blue, knit with the white, and it has trapped the blue over here on the edge. Do you see that? And then I'm going to knit the second white, and that finishes the trap. Then we're going to work across the row, and we're going to be trapping B over here. So we'll be there in just a second, and we'll see how we trap B, which is the light color. Two lights and then 5 darks in a row, and that's when we're going to want to trap. We'll trap on the third stitch, so we're going to work 1, 2, and then we're going to trap the light yarn. We do that by putting this needle in here, wrap the light around, wrap the blue around, take the white off, and knit the blue, and that traps the white right underneath that stitch. Then we'll continue our little pattern here and work to the end of the row. So I'll see you back in here in a second for another right side row. We've completed row 4, and now we're ready to start up on row 5. Row 5 has some interesting things going on. First, our last dark stitch was way over here, and the first dark stitch on row 5 is going to be here. So this really shows how important it is to keep the trapping over on the edge and not just go from here to here. So we're going to actually trap behind this stitch, because if we pull the blue yarn, the dark yarn, from here to here, this stitch is actually going to go like this, and it just won't look very pretty. But if we pull the dark yarn from here, trap behind here, then this stitch will give us a nice full stitch right here. The rest of the row is fine, nothing extraordinarily. I did do a short row in here, and I already did this, and I'll show you how to conceal the wrap on this stitch also. I have a video on how to do short rows in garter stitch. You know, the rows are much taller in stranded knitting than they are in regular stockinette. So you have to add even more short rows in the garter stitch so that your edges don't pull the work in and that they're flexible. So we're going to knit the first 3 as usual. We're going to trap behind the 4th stitch. So all we need to do to trap is to put our needle in here, bring this stitch, go underneath the dark, and make our stitch. And that has trapped the dark way over here on the edge. And then the next stitch is going to actually be our dark stitch, and we also have this short row wrap on here. So we're going to conceal those, and now we'll have a nice full normal stitch there on row 5. So I'm going to work across the rest of row 5, and I'll meet you back here for row 7 shortly. Okay, we're ready to do row 7. On this row, we're going to catch the yarn A right here. We're going to catch yarn A again under this long section of B. Here we go. So we're going to work 3 stitches because we need to catch the A underneath the 4th stitch. And remember, that's really easy. We just put our needle in here, go under A, make the stitch, and pull it through. Then we're going to knit 1 A, and then we have 5 B's in a row. 1, 2, and we're going to catch underneath the 3rd stitch. We go under B, the 3rd stitch, under A, throw B, pull it back. Now A is caught behind that stitch. And that's all there is to it. So there's really just 2 techniques that you need to learn, and that is trapping A behind B and trapping B behind A. And then you can use those same techniques for trapping over here at the end. Here's our little swatch that we've been working on, and you can see that it looks pretty nice. We did the extra garter ridge over here and extra garter ridge over here, and you can see if we hadn't done those, that those edges would be too short for the body of the work. You can see the front looks really good. The stitches are full on the sides. They're not collapsed. You can see where we caught the yarn behind. It does not show through to the front of the work unless you go like that, and then it'll show. Let's look at the other side. Okay, these are our ends here. And the tails. So you can see here where we caught this yarn out here, the A, caught here and here, and we caught along this side. Do you see how tidy that looks and how our floats were? How the strands just go straight across the fabric. Here's where we caught a float. Here's where we caught a float. Here's where we caught a float. Can you see those? This is what the back side of the work ought to look like. And it looks pretty tidy over here on the edges where we've caught those yarns. So I hope this helps you a lot in your stranded knitting when you're working it flat. I do have a tutorial knit along that we're doing, and I'll put a link to that in the directions, the description below this video. I hope you come back and see me again and enjoy more of my work. Take care. Happy knitting.